know the differences between I bleed red. You bleed green. What you been building for us?
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Solution Podcast, and tonight's conversation will be about the miseducation of the Negro and how a good job and a nice place to live lulls him to sleep, and he thinks that the war is over. And tonight I have Akil Parker and my man Cam's supposed to be joining us today. All right. So I want to first start off by saying that I had a little debate on another person's Facebook thread about what people look for in a particular like spouse or significant other, whatever. And a lot of times finances came up. And the thing I found disturbing was the black people think
it's Cam, I'm here.
Okay. The people think that finances is the cure-all to what's ailing the black community. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The actual problem that's disturbing black people, that's causing black people to mess up, is, in my opinion, a lack of love. So they're being miseducated, and they think that the war is over because they can go buy Gucci and they can afford a Benz or a Lexus. And that's just a false sense of security, in my opinion. So, Akil, do you have you want to add on to that?
Yeah. So, and I this is a very important topic, as you said earlier, and I kind of approach it as like a reformed, maybe like I don't know if I use the term addict, but like a person that used to really subscribe to that ideology that, really the solution for black people is just to get money. And we'd be fine. We'd be cool. But that I think that really, I'm glad I was able to refine my analysis and get out of that, because the reality is that the way the larger economic system of capitalism, or monopoly capitalism really, is set up, it's like everybody can't win in this system, even financially.
Right.
If you think of winning as financially winning or becoming wealthy or becoming rich or becoming set, it's set up mathematically. It's impossible for everybody to do well, especially when you have it's a zero-sum system where in order for people to get rich, there have to be a lot of poor people that are being exploited anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you consider with the example you gave, people, buying Gucci and, having nice cars and expensive cars and things like that. A lot of times that's done on debt financing, and credit, and people kind of, living beyond their means and, kind of doing the all flash and no cash type of existence. So that's not healthy either. And what it really does is it really gets us more involved in rugged individualism, and where we're just looking out for, we just chasing the bag, and just really trying to be individualistic, and just we've been kind of duped into believing that it's like as a group we can't win, and so we accept the fact. I think Fonte from Little Brother had this quote where he said, we don't want, black people don't want to win, but we just want to look good while we're losing. So I think that that ties right into having the nice car, having the luxury brands and all those types of things. And then, if we really want to go further with it, I think we have to ask the question as to, why do we even like those things? or why do they represent status? I know they represent status because even I've liked those things, like some of those things, and I still like some of them now. But I think we have to ask those questions like, is it because do we like Gucci because it's European, because it's Italian? Do we like certain cars, like a Lamborghini because it's Italian? I mean, so that's I think that's another part of the conversation that needs to be addressed, because when you really unpack that stuff, because a lot of times those things go without saying. It's like it's decent and it's just accepted that it is decent, but we don't take the time to think about, well, why is it decent? What makes it decent? Why is that cool?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then when we start asking that question, force a person instead of a person, people that typically just go with the flow because it's generally accepted that this is cool and this is decent. Then you start to say they may be willing, if they have the courage to do so, say, well, you know what? Yeah, that might not really be that decent. Now that I've taken the time to think about it.
Right. Because see, here's the thing. Going into my own family history, my grandfather in 1949, I guess, my mother tells me a story about these two white gentlemen knocking on the door one day, and they offer my grandfather a bag of money, you know what I'm saying, for his land over in New Jersey that he had. And, I guess it was, my mom says like $15,000, maybe $20,000. And for the time, my grandfather was, I guess, the equivalent to what a well-off dude would be doing today, like having a Lexus or a Benz, and his wife don't have to work and his kids ain't one for nothing. But that didn't translate into me, his grandson, having wealth or being well off. Because by the time I come around, I'm born into the struggle. So when people say, oh, I'm trying to build, what you trying to build? Because I see dudes who have it, who have access to, I guess, they can buy the finer things in life. So they have free money. And they not using that money to build. So all you're doing is wasting it. Like I posted, nigga rich equals white wealth. Now, they go around, like on this other guy's post I was on, a lot of the girls going around throwing this word, you broke, broke. But we all broke. Because here's the thing that nobody did the analysis on. If the white man say you fired, or if he just say, yo, we hiring niggas because y'all niggas, then who better than anybody? You understand? And just like if this was the 80s or the 90s, dudes was out here getting that crack money, right? Now it's a heroin epidemic out here, but how many niggas is getting their heroin money? See how they just turned the page? They not even letting y'all get that free money no more. So you go to college, because now you have to go to college. You have to get the good job. In other words, you have to generate 10 times probably what you can bring home. You have to generate for them 10 times probably what you can bring home, because you have to go to college. You have to get that degree. Then the realtor is going to come to you and say, yo, buy this house over here, because you don't have the wherewithal to say, no, stay in my community from which I come from. Because number one, the property is cheaper in the hood. Like the young lady I was debating with yesterday said, why would I want to live in the hood? Oh, you live in the hood because it makes economic sense. And when you just a flashy nigga, you ain't making no moves. I don't care what you got on the feet. I don't care what you driving. You're a buffoon. Okay? Because you ain't making the moves. And that shit ain't going to translate 3 generations down the road. Your grandkids going to be starting from scratch. Even if you did the quote unquote right things and you put up a college fund for your kid and your kid go to college, what that mean? You ain't built nothing. And again, you got to put your son or your daughter on the auction block so he can submit a resume and get hired. And then just like he gets hired, he can get fired. So what I'm saying is all these quote unquote ballers was out here building something. Like, look at your wealth like this. How many people on your payroll? How many people can you hire? See, if you hiring somebody, then I'm gonna give you your props. If you could take a brother and say, yo, all right, you could do this and do that for me, and give that man a consistent paycheck for 2 weeks, then you doing something. But until you doing that, then you need to shut the fuck up and stop calling people broke, because you broke. You just got a better job on a plantation. See, some niggas out here picking cotton, other people shoeing horses. Y'all slaves though. You know what I'm saying? So we having these stupid beefs. Niggas calling other niggas broke. No, nigga, we all broke. Cause we can't employ one another. We ain't own none of them buildings downtown. We don't own no malls. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If I could add on to that, like that reminds me of so two people that touched on that idea. Mm-hmm. The late Dr. Bobby Wright, mm-hmm. African-centered psychologist, did put in work out in Chicago. And also Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who formerly was known as H. Rap Brown. He used to run with Kwame Ture back in the 60s and early 70s and SNCC and all that.
Right.
One of the things Dr. Bobby Wright exposes is, and I think about this all the time, especially like whether I just hear people in general or I hear like rappers or, you know, whoever, people boasting about wealth and about, you know, money, having money and everything. One of the things Bobby Wright says, like, you know, white people print money. So the reality is, like, money really is just paper and ink. I know that may sound abstract to some people, but the reality is, like, money is a derivative. It only has value because a group of white men basically sit in a room and decide how much value it has. Because right now, you know, somebody, you know, based upon the way things are right now, if you have $1 million, you can buy a certain amount of things. That equates to a certain amount of buying power.
Correct.
But at any given moment, those white men in that room can say that, you know what, we're gonna change the level of the interest rates, or we're gonna artificially. Well, I mean, it's always artificial, I guess, if it's done by man. It's not done by nature. But mm-hmm. we're going to increase inflation. So at any given moment, your $1 million could have bought $1 million worth of things. Tomorrow, may be only able to buy what used to be $500,000 worth of things.
That's right.
So that money, that paper that you have, we don't have as a group. Again, and this is why individualism becomes stupid, because unless you have that collective power as a group of people, you can't protect yourself against that. Mm-hmm. Individual you could have $1 billion as an individual. You're not part of a strong group of people. Then tomorrow, because again, there's that group of white men getting together, having that meeting, your $1 billion might only be worth $500 million tomorrow. And you lost $500 million.
And our money isn't backed by anything. We all work for our money. So if you're a rapper, I mean, you sell you are a human resource. Yeah, that's what it's backed off. It's backed on your back. So your worth is based on how much work you do. But it's not really backed by anything. Like, we're not farming, we're not producers, we're not manufacturers. You know what I'm saying? So our money is just what the white man says it is. So unless we talking about building a real solid infrastructure or real solid industry, I mean, listen, black people came up with hip hop. Hip hop is like $1 trillion business probably over the years, right? Earned trillions of dollars. We don't know. But again, the black man gets a fraction of it. He generates the wealth and he only gets a fraction of the money he's generated. Just like, again, I use this example. I used it in a different podcast, like a Floyd Mayweather. So he's dancing around with a $350 million check. And he probably generated $10 billion. See, because we have a slave mentality. We are workers. So I don't know why anybody would act like the war is over or I'm tripping, because it's more to finding a mate or finding a spouse than how much money they make. That shouldn't even be a criteria. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you say that you speak of the war. So like we understand, and like some people among our community or within our community understand that there is a war that's been going on between different groups, different ethnic groups or racial groups or whatever you however you want to classify them. But there's like this idea that actually I apologize. I lost my train of thought. I got distracted. What was the last thing you said?
What about
talking about the war before you said the war is over?
Well, I was just saying, but they base their finding a spouse on the money. You know what I'm saying? Well, basically, I was saying how they basing a good a spouse or a mate, a potential, by how much money he makes or whatever. And I think that's just a bad way to do things.
Right.
And they think the war is over. See, and let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's a show that most people are familiar with called The Jeffersons, right? And I use this analogy a lot, right? Now, George Jefferson built a cleaning franchise, right? And he moves out of Harlem to move to Queens next to Archie Bunker, who is only a factory foreman and a taxi driver at night. So this is how we are miseducated. It's because his ascension is basically is a brainwashing, because he's moving from black Harlem to white Queens and then whiter what is it, the east side of Manhattan?
East side.
Yeah, upper east side of Manhattan. And he sells his home to rent an apartment. And instead of he kisses Mr. Whittendale's ass, put a cleaning business in his apartment building when he could have owned a building in Harlem, especially in that time in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a lot of slumlords in Harlem and in the Bronx. He could have bought up all that property, and then he could have been the Mr. Whittendale of Harlem. And we sit back and we watch these images on TV, and then we kind of say, yeah, that's what's up. George Jefferson doing it. And then his son doesn't want to follow in his footsteps and take over the business. He wants to go work for some white man. And they use this as psychological.
That's because we don't educate our kids, man. I mean, it's I think Millie Fuller said that you can have a black child and a white child sitting in the same classroom learning the same things, but they're digesting different things. So like when a black child is hearing about Christopher Columbus and a white child is hearing about Christopher Columbus, they see different things. It's the same thing with the slave trade. Them kids are looking at something. They're looking at the same pictures, kind of like 6 and 9. Like when I was in school, we went to a all black school, but what the same books we use would probably in white schools too. And when we see the black people getting, it's one of those pictures with the black women got the wood thing on their necks, and the kids running beside them, and they going in the slave ship. When we see that, we feel bad. Like those are our ancestors. When somebody else from another culture sees that, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's what we had to do to get what we had to get."
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably, we send our kids to these schools to learn by these people to teach us, and it's no supplemental education. Jewish people have Hebrew school, and Asian people they teach their children at home. Asian children learn Chinese and Japanese and Korean before they learn English, and they hold true to their names. Like I'm a definite advocate of the names that our people have as well. Like, you know, you walking around with, and I have a slave name. My name is fully European. I'm not going to say my whole name on here, but I have a European name. Like, and it's like, you know, you kind of, as opposed to the name that I gave my children, I gave all my children African-centered names. And, you know, it's kind of like, when I look at my name, it's as though it denotes that I was property. It denotes the history. Like, if I want to go back as far as I go back, I'll go to a white person who had a plantation, and his plantation had a bunch of my family members on it, and a bunch of people that wasn't in my family that also have that same last name because we were owned by that person. So, you know, we have to internalize all of that when we look at history and what we are teaching our kids going forward. Like, it's like we have to supplement everything that they're learning. Like, sure, you can send your kids to a public school or a Catholic school or whatever, but you gotta let them know. We have to teach them our history, say like on Saturday and Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't be. We have to teach them like this things that we talking about now, like this economic stuff. Like, you know, just buying a Benz is not being rich. It's just looking rich. Mm-hmm. And buying a Gucci belt is nothing. Like, you're just making the Gucci family rich. You're making Louis Vuitton's family rich. You know, we got to hone this in and start very young, like about what's important. Right. And we definitely are failing on that as a group, as a people.
Now, one of the young ladies that did the podcast, Ruby Red, everybody's familiar with her. She posted a question on Facebook. And I think it was, do you feel parents should make sure their kids have it better than they did? And I told her that was a very excellent question, because most times us as parents think if you give your children more than you had growing up, that your children are better off than you. And that's not the case. Your children don't really thrive off of material things. If we passing down wealth, and I mean not wealth, but yeah, we don't have wealth to pass. But I'm saying if we was to pass down wisdom and knowledge, then the children eventually, through time, could gain wealth. But we're not passing nothing down. So essentially, no generation is better off than the previous, because our dynamic between the white race and the black race stayed the same since slavery. We still get our food
and
from white.
The children are probably worse off. They're probably becoming worse off.
Yeah,
because you know, this society is kind of like, it's like a blended society. Is becoming more and more blended, and like you said, like our relationship with Caucasians hasn't really changed. I just saw something on the news yesterday. It said like 75% of Caucasians don't know a black person, or like, you know, not know a black, but know a black person personally. You know, we're striving to be what they are, and like Akil was saying earlier, like that's just not going to happen. Like, it's just not going to happen. Right. Because Europeans and Caucasians, they have a zero-sum mentality, which basically means that if you win, I lose, and that's the mentality of, that's historically the mentality of white people. If I'm winning, you have to lose. If you're winning, I'm losing. So they won't see us win with that mentality. Like, they won't say, oh, well, you know, we can't put the black man on equal footing with us, because that means we're going to be losing. If we're going to lose something here. and we have to create our own. Like we can't run around. I think one of y'all was talking about the Lamborghinis and the Italian stuff, because they see that as worthy of, bragging about. That's something to have. So in turn, because they are our teachers, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, we in turn pick that up. I guess it's nothing, like you can have a Corvette and you can have a Ferrari. They're the same car. They might even look the same car, but it's like, well, they said that the Ferrari is better, so I don't want the Corvette. I want the Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
I want to look richer than rich.
Right.
And when you look at like what you brought up about the zero-sum game, since we're talking about the miseducation of the Negro anyway, that ties definitely right into the education piece, because I actually argue this point that there's no such thing as a failing school, right? In the current context, in the current system, the typical schools that are considered to be failing, like when you look at, you judge a school by the Keystone scores of the high school students, or the PSSA scores of the middle school students, or all these types of things, or the amount of incidents of school violence within the physical school violence within the building, because it's cultural violence that happens constantly from 8 a.m. in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's cultural violence, but that's easily overlooked. But the thing is like there are no failing schools. If you look at this zero-sum game, something that's bad for us as Black people and for all Black children is beneficial to other groups such as the white people that are the perpetrators and collaborators with the global white supremacy. So it's bad for us, but it's good for them. But the problem is, like, with this whole like notion that we're all in this together, it denies us the ability to think critically and recognize that the way this system is set up, it is a zero-sum game. So like, we're not all in this together. It's like, it's like we're young children at the playground on a seesaw. Like we can't both be up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's, I think, another thing that it limits us and obstructs us from making real change and developing those independent institutions, which I think is what your point is, what you're speaking to, is the need for independent institutions for our own children, by us, controlled by us, because it's our responsibility to do that. Like, as men and as women and as people that care about our community, we have to build for ourselves. So this, the zero-sum game has to be understood. And, it's like, if we really understood, like, okay, well, like the school is, whether it's the school to prison pipeline that gets discussed, or, these young boys are going to jail at an earlier age, or they're out selling drugs or whatever, like, or they're failing out of school, they're dropping out of school. Like, there are entities that definitely benefit from that. And nobody, we're not supposed to talk about who's benefiting from it. We're just supposed to talk like, oh, this is such a bad thing. Like, even the finances of, like, the conversation about the fact that, oh, it only costs like, $30,000 a year to educate somebody in college, but it costs like what do they say, like $100,000 a year to house a prisoner. Like, that $100,000 that's getting spent by that state or the federal government, somebody's receiving that money.
Exactly.
Some entities are receiving that money. So those entities that are receiving that money, they're not mad. Whether it's the private prison corporation or whoever. And I think that if more of us would understand that, and then we say, okay, the way this system is set up now is set up like this for a reason. There's nothing like what AZ said back in the day on Nas, it was written out. It's nothing coincidental or accidental. That's what it is. It's supposed to be like this. And once you say, okay, well, it's supposed to be like this, then you say, okay, now I have a decision to make. Do I stay within this, or do I leave out of it? Because as long as you think that the way things are set up is some type of anomaly or something crazy going on, or it's really a glitch in the matrix, then you say, okay, well, let's try to fix the glitch in the matrix. But there is no glitch in the matrix. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Everything is working perfectly.
Right.
It's working at optimum conditions.
Yes. All systems are go.
That's another thing. Like, and that's what I think about, like, in terms of the zero-sum game that you talked about, Cam. Like, that more of our people need to understand, like, what that really means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely working perfectly if you got You got the NBA is 90% black, and you got the NFL, which is 75% black. And everybody that goes in there and signs a contract is a multi-millionaire, from walking onto that stage and getting signed. And it's just nothing reflecting that. It's nothing reflecting it. We got all these multi-millionaires, and there's no businesses being set up. There's nothing being done, and it's definitely by design. Definitely.
Yeah. That's definitely the case. And like I was saying, the dynamic between the white man and the black man has not changed. And until we can provide for ourselves the education, the food, the clothing, the motor vehicles, then the war is never going to be over. And you're never going to have your freedom. So I think that we're teaching our children to value the wrong things. And again, money isn't the paper that you can spend. That's a representation of money. Money is the things you can sell. Okay, because if this was a different time, centuries ago, millennia ago, maybe, you had to bring your chickens to the market to trade if you wanted some seeds, or if you wanted some fish, you had to bring something to trade. So all we have is the paper. We don't have the things you can trade. We don't have the thing of value to trade other than our labor. So when people say, well, like the girl was saying yesterday, that a dude has to have credit. He has to have a career. See, it's all this nonsense. And it's like, that doesn't make him a good mate for you. Not necessarily. That don't make him a good father for your kid necessarily, because a man could have all of that and it could be taken away.
Right. And I think a lot of that too is like, we've been here like, living under captivity basically, and we've been exposed to, westernized and Eurocentric cultural standards and cultural norms. So a lot of that just comes out of that. And, I guess it makes sense within the context of this system, but it's not even, I guess it really don't make sense within the context of this system, because this system itself is not sustainable. And it can't be maintained long term. And I think that's why we see, because even with somebody, like it might be a sister that might find a man, or a man that finds a sister, or a sister finds a man, and that man that she wants has that stable career, has that certain income, and has these other things based on more so Eurocentric culture, and the relationship still don't work out. So I think that would be interesting for us to look at. Okay, well, what about all the people that, they had the like ideal mate, like whether, man and woman on both sides of the coin, like, man and woman, and why did this relationship still not work? Why was there was still no longevity, no long-term, relationship, where they're sitting back, as grandparents, still married like 50 years later. So I think that'd be interesting to look at. So I think you're right. Like, there's some other things that are missing. Some things that may be more important, that we're overlooking because of our training and our socialization process.
Because I honestly, I think that the solution to this whole thing is looking towards the next generation. Now, what I mean by that is this. When I was a child, right, we didn't have a place you could go play football, so we played in the street. But the adults on the block didn't want us to play football because they were afraid we were going to break their windows or break their mirrors off their cars, or we couldn't play baseball. Then we used to play tops, in the street. And this lady, Miss Cisco, she didn't want us in front of her house playing tops. So it's nothing for us to do. Then around 86, when, like 85, we was spinning on our backs and breakdancing and having fun. And then the next year, all my friends is around the corner getting into shit, you know, selling drugs, being baby gangsters. And that's because there was nothing for us to do. Because everything we did as children, it was a complaint by some adult. Don't play no ball on the street. Don't do this. Don't do that. Now, we're not doing right by the kids now that we're adults because we didn't set anything up for them. You know what I'm saying? So it's nothing set up for children. They get poor educations because we're not educating them. We don't have no jobs waiting for them. They have to go and do exactly what we did and go to the white man, beg for a job.
Mm-hmm.
So if we start thinking about that, us so-called the people that got dough, okay, if they start thinking about that and not just, oh, I got bonds and stocks for my kids, I'm gonna pass this down to my kids. Oh, I got my college fund already set up. That's not helping. What they need set up is they need a place to go and free their minds. You know what I'm saying? They need to know how to love one another. These little boys and girls.
It's kind of like, did you know that Jewish people can go to Israel for free? All they got to do is just prove that they have ancestors that are Jewish people, and they get to go. They get to go to Israel, and they can just go. You know, they just have a place set up for them to just, you know, go and be Jewish. You know,
right?
It's just part of
and learn
who they
how
are.
and learn how.
I always go ahead.
No, I was just saying they just learn how to be Jewish, and we need to learn how to be black.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, and we got a whole continent. We got a whole continent. If I'm not mistaken, Ghana has offered all American blacks in America or victims of the transatlantic slave trade. They've offered all of us the opportunity to come over and become dual citizens. I think I was looking at something about all the blacks in Ghana. It's probably about from the United States. I think it was probably about, it was either 5 or 5,000 people have gone over there and used that extended offer that the Ghanaian government has given us. So, I mean, it's just not, I don't know. You have a problem sometimes even getting our people to even accept and acknowledge our African heritage and lineage, as opposed to, you know, like some blacks don't even want to be called, I'm not African American. I'm just American. I'm just, you know, you hear it all the time, especially with a lot of older people, younger people too, but you hear it more with the older blacks in America about the whole African thing. And it's like you look at the people who are successful, and a Korean doesn't have any problem calling himself an Asian. A white man has no problem calling himself an Italian, you know, or a German, or a Russian, or whatever his family is or was before they got here. And I believe that keys and plays into the success of these people. You know, they know who they are. They aren't a lost people, quote unquote lost people. And our people are kind of grabbing at any straw that you can find. Like, you know, like I don't believe that African American is not really a thing to me. I mean, it might be to somebody else, but I mean, it's not a thing to me because you can't be both. And Lord knows we shouldn't want to be American. So
that's the truth.
That's deep. They don't want to hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like this Solution Podcast, right? I be taken aback about how, you know, you can see a lot of shit on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and most of the shit is like real lowbrow, clowny shit. And somebody says, yo, I got a Solution Podcast that we could build on. I'm so shocked that it's so few people interested. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, people want to complain, people want to bitch, but nobody want to solve the problems. You know what I mean? every time
You
I
talking
do a
that? You
show,
talking that? You
every
talking
time,
that off the wall back to Africa shit again?
right?
Mhm.
And it's like every time I do a show, it should be packed, like it should be. But you know, I understand that a lot of people just don't care. Like slavery is a choice. You know, I can't. I used to feel sorry, like, oh man, my whole mind frame changed on the whole slave trade thing, just judging by how black people are today with no chains on them, okay, and how they just elect to stay in the position that they're in. I said, you know, it's weird to me that these things get passed down from generation to generation to generation. It's nobody has that escape mentality. Like, fuck it, let's do it ourselves. We are out of all the melanated people on the planet, we're kind of lucky because we're here. In other words, this is the enemy's home base. Okay, he not going to drop no bombs on us because he be dropping bombs on himself. He not going to contaminate the water because he got to drink it too. You understand? And it's quite frankly, he taught Negroes his tactics in war because they in his army, they in his navy, they in his air force, and we got access to everything he got access to. So just because you on American soil and you have access to his internet and his telephone lines, you can now do business. You could do commerce. You don't necessarily we're not stuck in the confines of white supremacy. But I think this is where we are comfortable as a race. That's why, you know, ain't nobody looking for no solution. Ain't nobody looking for no remedy to the problem because there is no problem. Negroes are exactly where they want to be. It's only we the only ones who have a problem with it because we're not where we want to be. We want to be free. We want to be African. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, look.
Another thing you touched on about why people aren't like striving for change is it's kind of like what Chris Rock joked about it being a Martin Luther King street in every ghetto in America, and you know they now as you know as when we were younger, Malcolm X wasn't as popular as he is now. But it's a subconscious thing to Martin Luther King's name being everywhere that black people are. Like, my neighborhood high school where I grew up was Martin Luther King High School. You know, in Philadelphia, we didn't have a Martin Luther King Street. I don't believe it's one here. They changed the name of the drive. But his name is everywhere, and I think on a subconscious level, that's done on purpose because when a black child sees what Martin Luther King stood for and stood out and all the things that he did for us and our people, subconsciously a child is going to say, but he died when he was 38 or 39 years old. Like, he was killed. And it's like the same thing with Malcolm X. Like, Malcolm X was, he was killed. They was like around the same age when they were killed. Like, they weren't even 40 years old, I don't believe, when those two men died. And it's like subconsciously, our children will hear about King all the time. I believe that's one of the reasons why they force feed Dr. King among all the hundreds of thousands of black people, historical figures. They always talk about Dr. King because Dr. King was publicly doing things for his people, and he was killed by, I mean, now it's come out that the government killed him, and it's kind of like, well, whatever, yeah, we did it. You know, it's kind of, they kind of talk about that whole assassination of Dr. King, like, kind of like the Trail of Tears with the Native Americans. Like, you know, yeah, we pushed them off their land, and we sent them to Oklahoma, and half of them died. Fuck it, yeah, that's what, you know, it's like you can go on the internet right now and see that the government was found guilty of an assassination on Dr. King. And it's like, oh, yeah, we did it. Well, you know, fuck it. You know, that was 50 years ago. Like, it's like, whatever. So we, as black people, we have to, you know, we have to it's definitely a lot of subconscious things going on to why black people aren't trying to do more. I mean, it's overt things too, but you a lot of times you got to look at that. Like, why is this here? Why are these people put in our historical books and we always see his face? Why is this man given a holiday? Like, because on that holiday, people are supposed to, say, oh, well, yeah, he died, but he died for what? Like, he died doing something good or perceivably good for his people. And when a kid sees that, he might say, well, I want to be like Dr. King, but I don't want to get shot, So it's always, you got to always see that might be in the minds of our people because it's being done subconsciously.
Well, I think that the Martin Luther King was killed because Malcolm X was killed. I mean, they made Malcolm a martyr, and when Malcolm died, immediately the Black Panthers pop up. So you have to kill Dr. King, so his legacy will loom greater than Malcolm X's. So they plaster Martin Luther King everywhere so we could continue to preach his doctrine. I think it wasn't until the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that I even heard Malcolm X mentioned on national TV. Oh, I think Michael from Good Times might have mentioned him, but he didn't go in. So I think they a couple of black shows come out and they just Malcolm X. Like I said, I don't know how old I was when I first even heard his voice. You know what I mean? I might have been 17, 18. And that's a shame because
I'm sure he was on Eyes on the Prize, right? So I'm sure they had a little clip about him on Eyes on the Prize came out in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah, but it wasn't like this is a guy. It was this sidebar. This was Martin Luther King's competition. You know what I'm saying? Like he's the other guy. He's a radical. He doesn't count. And like I was having a conversation with my man the other day, and I was like, his dream, right, was to share a lunch counter with white people, and that's what he dreamed about. I mean, that like why are we following this dude? Like, why does he have a holiday, and Garvey doesn't, or Malcolm X doesn't? That don't even make any sense.
Well, we know why.
But no, we don't know why, because we can make that decision. And it's like, why don't this is my number one question is why don't niggas care about their own salvation, their own like freedom? Like we just eat what's in front
because the people that they look up to don't. You always have to keep in the front of your mind that most black people, as the 5%ers would say, the 85ers or whatever, they want to be white. At the end of the day, they want that status. They want to say, I'm as good as a Caucasian.
But
that's why they get mad when they.
But that's the crazy.
Niggers.
That's the craziest shit, because they don't want to be white in essence, because then they would do what white people do. It's like Amos Wilson had a good lecture on that. It's like, yo, we claim somebody's thinking like a white person, but ain't no black person thinking like a white person, because a white person is setting up shit for himself.
I can speak on that.
Go ahead.
So I think that based on the doctrine of global white supremacy, whiteness is the standard. Everything Europeans have done, everything white people have done, or they claim to have done, or they tell us they've done, is the standard. Now, the where it gets complicated is that we still are socialized to know. We know that we're socialized and miseducated. Going back to Woodson, that we should strive to be the standard of white people and what they do and what they say and the way they carry themselves and everything, because of white supremacy. That's the main feature of white supremacy. But then something that E. Franklin Frazier talked about in his book, Black Bourgeoisie, and this is something that, you know, I started thinking about this, you know, early in my teaching career, like teaching at, you know, different charter schools. And I would just look and I would say, like, why isn't this working? Or like, why is this not happening? Or why do these administrators not really care about this? Or why do these other teachers not care about this? It goes back to that Fonte line from Little Brother. Like, we don't want to win. We just want to look good while we're losing. Like what Frazier talks about is he makes this comparison. He's like, black people in America are basically like children. We're like children playing collectively. In many ways, we're like children playing dress up. So, you know, you go in, you know, you're a young boy, you go into your dad's closet, you like put on one of his dress shirts, his oversized, put on one of his ties, like you're playing a game. So to us, the white people are supposed to be like our parent. You're just playing dress up. So it's like you might.
And the
try
funny
to
thing about that, I don't want to cut you off, but the funny thing about that is there's an interview where a white dude, this is from like the 60s or the 50s, and he says that that's how white people look at us. Like we're like their children or their pets that we have to take care of.
Right. And within the doctrine of white supremacy within this system. And also let's not forget that white supremacy can't exist as a standalone doctrine. It has a corresponding concept or corresponding system of black inferiority, because it can't exist without black inferiority. So if we believe in the supremacy of whites, we have to also, and not a lot of times this is unspoken and it's unarticulated, we have to believe that we ourselves are inferior. So then that feeds into why we won't try to start that corporation. We won't try to start that manufacturing firm to create our own clothing. We won't try to start that farm that can supply our own foods, because there's an innate belief that we could never do that. That's what the white people do. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what the Asians do or the Arabs do. But we can't do that because we've been socialized from birth within this system. And I think the solution to that is we have to first have more of these conversations and be real explicit about why we're doing the things we're doing, and then, you know, just put it out there, because because there's not a lot of conversations about this going on. Even when you know people mention the term white supremacy, it's kind of like this I don't know, this all-encompassing like idea that is you know ubiquitous, and you really can't beat it, but we just people just acknowledge it, but we can't. It's really just an idea. It's really just a theory, for real. It's a theory. Like, you know, B.O.B. could talk about flat Earth theory. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I don't know. I haven't done the research myself. I don't think the Earth is flat. I think the Earth is round. But you know, anybody can come out with any theory they want. Global white supremacy is a theory. It's a theory. It's the idea that they are supreme. Everything they do is better than every other ethnic group, every other racial group. And what corresponds with that is, you know, that you know, us as black people, we have to be inferior because
you got to believe it
of them, right? And if they control all the institutions, then the institutions, and it's another, like what Wilson talks about, is like they create an educational system that dictates that. So even if you're unsuccessful with the education system and you never got good grades in school and you might have failed out, dropped out, it's like, okay, but even if you that supports white supremacy, but even if you are successful with the education system, and you go to one of the so-called good schools, and I challenge that idea too of what a good school is as well, the definition of what that's called, a connotation or whatever. I challenge that too. Go to one of these good schools and go to college and get a degree and everything. You could be a mathematics major in college, get a 4.0. You might go and get a PhD in applied mathematics or pure mathematics, just as an example. But if you're always studying mathematics through a Eurocentric cultural lens, and you're always studying these European mathematicians like Leibniz and Fermat and Descartes and all these people, it's like you might have did well, but you're gonna feel like you're not within your own domain. It's like, yeah, you did good in something that black people don't do, and at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I did well, but I did well in something that is not innate to me and my people. So it's like a situation where you won, but you really lost. You still lost because the real history is that our ancestors were really responsible for developing a lot of those ideas, a lot of those mathematical theories and practices, and you know, and within a lot of that. So again, so it's like, this theory of white supremacy just has this way of like just being all encompassing. So it's gonna, and then you mentioned, Al, you mentioned like freedom, like why don't we want to get free? I think the problem with the issue with that too is that it's like definition. It's like some of the things that you spoke about in the beginning of this session, about having the Gucci, having the Benz, having like, a nice house somewhere. Those material things, again, within this system that we live in, those are the representations of freedom. And we've been taught and socialized to think that we're free. So when you say like people think the war is over, they think the war is over because they're like, shit, I got my Gucci bag and I got my Benz and like I'm cool, like I'm good. So their belief is that, based on their miseducation and their socialization, is that they are free. So I think one of the keys is you gotta like dig at like the foundation of those belief systems that tell them that they're free. Because we on here, we know, no, that's not freedom. But it's kind of like, I think because I've had this problem too. Like, we approach people and we're saying one thing. It's like we're speaking two different languages. Because we're speaking a language of Black people that want to get free and that have a certain definition of freedom and what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the people we end up talking to have a totally different definition of freedom. Like I remember people thought that, in 2008 or January 2009 or November 2008, when Barack Obama was elected, they thought that was freedom. Like, we won, we cool, we good now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember I had a student tell me that. I was teaching Upward Bound, tutoring after school Upward Bound. I was reading a book, something political or whatever, and the young sister said to me, like, boy, like, man, you better get out of here. We got a Black president now. And at that point, I'm glad she said that to me, because that really, I didn't know what to say. I was at a loss for words, right? But that was my own naivete, not understanding that other people had not been exposed to certain things that I was fortunate enough to have been exposed to. Whereas I'm like, nah, we still got a lot of work to do, And in fact, I think Barack Obama was really just a great chess move by white supremacy, to get us to chill, to get us to lull many of us.
Because Bush had us all riled up. You know what I'm saying? We was like, enough is enough. You know what I mean? And they gave us a pacifier. Just the perception of an intelligent, the Huxtables in the White House. There you go.
But there's something else I wanted to talk about too. I wanted to chime in and talk about King a little bit too, because I do want to say some things about King, because I think the issue with King is that I think King went through some changes and he was on a certain trajectory and he developed over time. But I do definitely disagree with the narrative that, once again, the prevailing system of white supremacy puts out about him. Because I think because kind of like when I was growing up, I was like taught, because fortunately, like my parents, taught me about Malcolm X, and they taught me basically Malcolm X was thorough. I didn't know too much about King, but like in my schooling, I kind of deduced that okay, King was pussy because he wasn't trying to fight, right? But the one thing was, it's like, then as I got older, I studied him more, and people like Kwame Ture talk a lot about King, and that's another thing, what the mainstream media definitely doesn't want to do is let us know that King was really Kwame Ture's old head. And a lot of the brothers and sisters in SNCC, he really worked closely with them.
Yeah.
But they had differences. They have differences in political approaches. But King really believed in the Judeo-Christian ideals, and he believed in nonviolent resistance as a strategy. But of course, Kwame Ture, one of his famous lines is, nonviolence won't work when you're dealing with a group of people that have no conscience. Because it's if we're in a fight with somebody, we trashing them, we just beating the shit out of them, just beating the brakes off of them, and they not even hitting back. You might, because you have humanity, you might stop and just chill, you know what I mean? But but if you don't have humanity, you might just beat them to death. You might just kill them. You know what I'm saying? But and that's what But King had this assumption that, okay, well, these white people are human, and if we just present ourselves as respectable human beings, and we're just going to march, we're just going to walk through, we're doing a peaceful protest, then they'll recognize damn, yeah, we're throwing bottles and sticks at them, and we beating them up, and we got the fire department spraying water at them and everything at high velocity. So damn, they're not even fighting back. You know what? These guys really aren't that bad. Let's let them live. You know what I mean? But it didn't work because those white people did not have a conscience. right? And then I think the other thing with the King narrative is like it kind of like freezes at 63 with the "I Have a Dream" speech. You know, which is one of his weakest speeches ever. You know, out of all his speeches, he gave a lot of speeches and he has a lot of dope speeches. Like I think the speech. Well, this is what Kwame Ture claimed, and other people claim that the speech that got him assassinated was the "Why I Opposed the War in Vietnam" speech.
Yeah, that was like a year. It was like a year to the day that he was murdered.
Exactly. And
it was like April 4th, 1967 that he made that speech.
Yeah, because then the federal government's like, because it was like, okay, you could talk all that, you know, anti-segregation stuff, talk about, you know, the big bad white people in Mississippi and Alabama and Bull Connor and all them. But once you start talking about us and what we doing over in Vietnam, because again, Kwame Ture and them, they, you know, and SNCC, they came to them and said, like, you know, well, King, you know, you talking about nonviolent resistance, but you know what I mean? Like, but our brothers are still going over to Vietnam. They're not being nonviolent in Vietnam. And that's not their fault. They're getting drafted. So you got to speak out about that. And King criticized him. He criticized himself. And he said the line that there comes a time when caution becomes cowardice. And he's talking about himself. And he was like, yo, it's time to stand up. I got to man up. And I got to speak out about this. I can't just keep letting this ride. Because I talk all this other shit about, you know, nonviolence and, you know, Judeo-Christian ideals. But these brothers is going over to Vietnam, getting shot in the head, getting killed, you know, for a war that they shouldn't even be involved in anyway. So they trying to, like, you know, they trying to bully these the United States trying to bully these Vietnamese because they mad that the Vietnamese, you know, kicked France out. France couldn't beat them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, and he starts talking about the triple evils of, like, racism, militarism, and, I can't think of the other one. But basically his whole thing was like, you know, okay, we poor in the South, we poor in the North. Black people is poor all over this country, but if y'all gonna spend $40 billion on a war, then of course we're gonna be poor. Like that money could be spent for improvement programs and like projects to help our people. You know, so then he got into the economics too, and he was like, he became he was anti-capitalistic. You know, just like Malcolm was. Malcolm realized that 3 years earlier. That's why that's part of
he was trying to do the poor people's campaign.
Yeah, because he got international with it. Once you get international, you get out of just like the United States, then it becomes really a problem because it's really about being global. Because what Malcolm was talking about is like, damn, like, yeah, we struggling, like brothers and sisters are struggling down North Philly, and brothers and sisters are struggling in Nairobi, Kenya, and Accra in Ghana. So like, you know what I'm saying? We gotta like, and in Jamaica, and then like, you know, South America. So we gotta like start thinking like that. And then Malcolm's talking about Pan-Africanism. And then, you know, King is, you know, challenging the United States government. And really, and I think too, like, there's some other speeches where King starts to sound, he starts to sound more like Malcolm in terms of pushing toward, I'm not going to call King a black nationalist. I wouldn't say that. But I would say he's moving in that direction. He's moving in that direction from some of the things he's saying, like, because they had the in '67, another speech he gave. It was like the address to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the annual address, and he's talking about like Operation Breadbasket, which is basically like organized economic boycott. Like on some like, if you are a store and you serve black people and you don't, or you sell to black people and you don't allow black businesses or black manufacturers or retailers or distributors to sell in your store, then we're gonna boycott your store. Pretty like that. Like there's nothing to talk about. That's just what we're gonna do.
Well, my thing with Dr. King is, I think it's all a conspiracy. Like I'm not a fan of his, no matter what people tell me about he changed his evil ways or whatever. I'm not buying it. I look at it from a different perspective. Malcolm X, a year after he left the Nation of Islam, was really on it. Like he was about to do something very, very, very big for black people. So they had to kill him. But then him being a martyr made him larger than the white man can handle. Again, he influenced a whole bunch of revolutions that probably went on in Africa and here in America with the Black Panther Party.
Al, I think your phone breaking up.
Oh, you ain't hear me?
It's breaking
You
up.
breaking up. I hear you, but you're breaking up. Though.
Shit. All right. Am I good now?
No, you're still breaking up a little bit.
Damn. All right. How about now?
Man, we can hear you, but yeah, you still breaking up.
I'm still breaking up real bad.
It's not bad, but it's not good for radio. Yeah.
Oh man. See, because I was about to, you know what I mean? I was about to tear Martin Luther King up real quick. Now the fix is in.
That's why. You know what I mean? Like that's why. But I think you gotta check. Well, you gotta wrote a couple books like Why We Can't Wait, Strive Toward Freedom, Where Do We Go From Here, Community or Chaos. I mean, he really like King really went. I think the thing that with King is he really believed, he was honest. Like he really believed in those so-called Judeo-Christian values of, you know, love your. I don't think they like King. I'm not saying that this is your position, but I think King has kind of been put into a space or a box by a lot of people that they think he was kind of cooning, like for the white people. And I think King really believed, like, you know, like this is if we're gonna be Christians, then we need to look at these people, you know, regardless of what they do to us as humans, that's just flawed humans.
All right, can
but
I tell you something?
Life, I want to say toward the end of his life, he started to realize. I think it's like supposedly he said to Harry Belafonte, "I fear that I've integrated my people into a burning house." Yeah. I think he started to realize like maybe integration was not the way, or you know, at least for that particular point for that period of time, maybe. But I'm saying I definitely recommend like check out like King's writing and like listen to some of his speeches. Like
I have.
Even though like Letter from a Birmingham Jail, that was before '63. So he was always a good writer, and like Letter from a Birmingham Jail is real decent. That's just real great. That's just good writing. But like toward the end, like 67, 68, like, you know, the way he was on that net.
Well,
you know,
see,
when he was
my
like,
whole thing,
he was definitely on a trajectory.
My thing with Dr. King is I'm gonna sum it up like this. It's either one of two things. Either he is a coon and he knew exactly what he was doing and working for the government to hold black people back, or he was a moron and didn't know what he was doing and he held black people back and got a lot of brothers killed or harmed. Now, either way, we don't need to be praising this man. Now, I find it very suspicious that after Malcolm X passes away, he then changes his attitude. Oh, so you was doing this since the late 50s, and then all of a sudden in the late 60s, you're changing your tune. So it took all this, 4 little girls getting killed, and Malcolm X getting killed, and Robert Kennedy and everybody getting killed. It took all of that for you to be like, yo, I think I made a mistake. Come on, dog. You know what he was doing? He was losing the crowd. You know, he probably couldn't fill up the auditorium. So he had to switch his pitch so he could maybe still be relevant. Cause they like, yo, he don't have no usefulness. Why we funding you? Dog? The youth ain't listening to you. So I find it very suspicious that then he would change his rhetoric up to make it more in line with what some of the brothers in the Black Panther Party was talking about, because they were more relevant, especially to the youth. So I think his whole thing was a conspiracy. And before he falls off, the white man says, before he falls off, yo, let's whack the guy and make him a martyr and keep that message going. Because by the time I come around, by the time I'm conscious, I'm 10, 11 years old. That's all I know is Martin Luther King. Stevie Wonder wrote a song for him. It's like, and for what? What did he really do? Like, he had an audience with like 2 presidents, and what happened? He did nothing for us. And that's the bottom line. That's all we like. Fuck them pretty sounding words, because Farrakhan gives us pretty sounding words. Farrakhan talks a lot of shit. Everybody's talking shit, but you have the resources, you have the opportunity to get some shit done. Like Martin Luther King was, he could talk to the grassroots people, and he had the rich wealthy blacks. Then he had some white people. All right, my nigga, what you doing? You still talking shit? Like, come on, man.
This is what I would say. Like, looking back in retrospect, this is why, like, in a certain way, I wouldn't say I've softened my position on integrationists, but I think that the integrationists were necessary because. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I think the integrationists were necessary to do what they did and try to do what they did to show that it didn't work. I think, like us in 2017, we can look back as people now, they attempt to try to.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, and so people now are trying to push integrationism or really assimilationism. Then we have King as an example to say, look, he tried that, he went hard at it, they murdered him. So, and these were the errors that he made, and this is still the same America. So now we say, no, I think we need to look toward independence, which our ancestors have ever since the 19th century, or the 18th century, 19th century, probably the 17th century as well. We've been trying to be nationalists. There have been different camps of African people on this land that have been trying to do that as well. We're trying to do both, but I think with King, like, doing as much as he did, he exposed his work exposes a lot of the flaws in the goals of integrationism, or I keep saying that, I mean to say in assimilationism, really, because I think those two terms get conflated.
But see, my thing is, why is that even part of the strategy? Like, us wanting to assimilate shouldn't even have been an experiment to try in the first place. It's like, yo, you go. Hold on, let me finish real quick. Just like when in human nature, if somebody rejects you, right, you're not going to keep bugging them and following them. That's not human nature. You're going to say, all right, well, fuck it then. I'm going to go over here and do my thing. Why are we assimilating with whites? When we
here's the problem with that. So I agree with that. But,
okay.
But the problem with that is issue of like resources, the availability of resources. And I think again, a lot of the work that like King was trying to do was not necessarily about trying to be next to white people, but he's like, okay, well, if my people need food, clothes, and shelter, and the white people control it, and they're controlling the government, they're controlling the voting, they're controlling like the access to the food, clothes, and shelter. It's like, damn, if I gotta be with the white people, the food, clothes, and shelter, then that may just be what we have to do right now. Now, I think that it's harder it's gonna be hard either way. It's gonna be hard either way, and that's improving. It's improving hard either way, whether you take the integration route or the nationalist route. I personally, we talked about this before. Like, I prefer to do the hard work going towards nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you're supposed to do. That's what everybody does that's successful. See, my problem with Dr. King, is just his contemporaries were like Elijah Muhammad. And Elijah Muhammad was talking about pretty much just being a nationalist, giving us some land and letting us do our own thing. And King was pretty much against that. He was like, no, we want to be at Woolworth's counter. We want to eat the food next to white people. And it's like, you had the ear of the majority of our people, and you didn't push them towards being independent.
Right.
You pushed them towards being near whites, and then you kind of came around to saying, well, because I think he had a couple of meetings with Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad outlived Dr. King by almost 10 years, like 7 years. But I know that there are a couple of pictures of them having a meeting together. And I don't know if that might have changed his ways or not, but that's always been my biggest problem with King. Like, it's kind of like what Al was saying, like, well, you don't want me around you, well, I'm gonna get the fuck away from you. And that's how I am as a man. If you don't want my company, I'm not going to strive to be in your company.
Right.
And
right.
It was just, I mean, I was born damn near 10 years after you know, he was gone, and I just saw his whole spiel on reality is just counterproductive. I saw it as counterproductive.
Yeah, me too.
I saw what the Marcus Garveys were doing, even though they weren't contemporary. But I saw what the Elijah Muhammad's was doing. Even Father Allah, who was just a spinoff of Elijah Muhammad. I just saw that as, you know, it's like, let's make our nation, the nation of gods on earth, or the nation of Islam, is we have to have our own thing. And like you said, maybe this will, maybe because, you know, we just a step on the staircase. You know, our reality is very short. You know, most people don't live to be fucking 80 years old, but we are just a step. Like we're seeing the steps. Like maybe somebody will look back and say, Dr. King's way didn't work. We gotta do it another way. So hopefully we'll get to see the beginnings of that.
And yeah, I wanna go back to what Akil was saying about the lack of resources. And when you gotta think of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and towns like Rosewood and such, they fresh out of slavery and they built their own town, the Black Wall Street and all that. So it wasn't a matter of resources, especially in the 1960s. Okay, we can get our hands on lumber, we can get our hands on wheat, and we can get our hands on pigs and chickens. Okay, so it wasn't about resources. It was about pooling the resources, being like coming together as a black race. Since nobody fucks with you. Okay, nobody likes you. Nobody wants to hire you. Nobody want to be around you. All right, they had to have the National Guard walk a little girl into a school. Like, come on, man, who's doing all of that? And the fact that 4 little girls got blown up in church, that should have ended all the civil rights nonsense. I'm to this day, I'm still mad about that. And I'm more mad at the black men than I am at the white men, because y'all let that shit go. Y'all let that shit go down and it went unanswered. All right, now
let me
now
add
we
this.
not fucking around.
Let me complicate things.
Huh?
Let me complicate things by saying this.
Go ahead.
So one of the criticisms that I don't know, I guess it's kind of like creates like a dichotomy between like Malcolm. It kind of feeds into the dichotomy between Malcolm and Martin, which I think they actually were more alike than different, right? But one of Malcolm X's criticisms of the Nation of Islam was that one of the things he did appreciate about King and, you know, SCLC and CORE was that they were confronting. They weren't fighting. They wasn't like throwing their hands up. They didn't have guns, but they were confronting, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas his criticism of the NOI was like, well, damn, like, you know, they down there in Alabama doing this, or they down in Mississippi doing this. Like, let's go down there, you know. But Elijah Muhammad's position was like, nah, not going down there. We're not getting into that, you know. And that was one of Malcolm's, you know, observations. Like, nah, we should be down there. Because they're doing the nonviolence thing. We don't do it as the black Muslims. We don't do the nonviolence thing, but we should be down there. And then, you know, but at least like he did appreciate that. Things like, you know, again, that was a strategy. It was a political strategy, not a political strategy, but a strategy of nonviolent resistance. But we're still going to go. We're going to go down there. We're not going to fight back, but we're going to go. We're going to go in this space where we're allegedly not supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Right. So how does that factor?
You mean like I don't understand your question.
Like, how does that factor into the analysis? If we say, well, you know, but the Nation of Islam was not going down to
This free conference call is provided by Uber Conference. Joining conference now.
Just say King and them. They're going in. They're going down it. Like they're already.
I think Elijah's whole thing was that, because Elijah was against voting, so he was against. He didn't want to integrate. The nation didn't necessarily want to integrate. They, their big thing was it's nation time. It's nation building time. He wanted his own land. I think it was, as far as the nation went, and I can't speak for the nation.
I think the land was down there. That's another thing. I think the land was in the South. It was like the South. It was like similar to like the Republic. Later on, the Republic of New Africa. They wanted like the whole Southeast. Like
they wanted a state. Well, Elijah actually, he wanted a state. He just wanted a state. Elijah was asking for a state, but I think that was kind of counter to his whole doctrine. Like, okay, well, we walk into Selma, so we can get these rights, and we try to do this voter drive, and his whole thing is like we don't want to be a part of that. Like, that's not what we want to be a part of. We don't want to be a part of this part of America. It's kind of like the Chinese people. Like, you never hear the Chinese people talking, or the Asian people. I don't even want to group just the Chinese. You never hear Asian people talking about who they're going to vote for and who they're supporting, and, because they don't care. They're on a mission. Like,
Right.
you don't see
First of all, I'm not to cut you, but can y'all hear me?
Huh?
Can y'all hear me good now?
Yeah, you're clear now. Yeah, you sound good now.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Sorry for that.
you
I want to
sounded pretty
apologize for the technical difficulty I just had. All right,
good.
my fault. I didn't mean to cut you.
But later on, let me complicate things more, because later on, after Malcolm leaves the Nation of Islam, he delivers probably his most famous speech, the ballot or the bullet.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So he's concerned about voting.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Elijah. I ain't talking about Malcolm. Malcolm had a whole. Malcolm was trying to be international. He was UN. We gotta go to the UN. We gotta link up with our brothers in Africa. That's what Malcolm was on. I'm just talking about Elijah per se, like the nation's doctrine. When he did the ballot or the bullet, I think he was out of the nation at that time.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, that was 64. He was
64,
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was an incredible speech, by the way. He, my question to you, Cam, is, it doesn't give you any like pause that Elijah Muhammad never stepped in to intervene whatsoever when it came to that action, and he was supposed to be grooming the NOI specifically for that. I don't believe.
You mean like with Malcolm being killed?
No. What I'm saying is,
What?
I find it very suspicious about Elijah Muhammad that I look at these guys, some of these leaders, as figureheads. In other words, he doesn't really believe the shit he talking about. Just like Farrakhan doesn't today. Elijah Muhammad was.
I think Elijah believed when he was talking about. I think Farrakhan.
I put it into action though.
I think Farrakhan has always been working for the government. I think Farrakhan is a mole.
Why do you believe it about Farrakhan, but you don't believe it about Elijah Muhammad?
I don't think Elijah. I think Elijah believed in what he was doing, because Elijah told Wallace, his son that he wasn't his oldest son.
His seventh
He was
son.
probably his most learned son.
He was number 7. That's why. He was very superstitious. So
Wallace Dean,
yeah, Wallace was his seventh son.
He told Wallace that when he passed on, that he wanted to move the Nation of Islam into regular Islam, not the Nation of Islam's Islam, which is not really the same as Sunni Islam.
Mm-hmm. But why would he want to do that? Like my question to you is, why?
Wallace.
Hold on, let me ask you a question. Why do you think that Elijah Muhammad is honest in what he was preaching? Because there's no indication that he was about the action of his words. He preached.
Well, I'm not in the Nation of Islam, as you know, but
Mhm.
I think that what Elijah was saying was 100 times more relevant than what anybody else was saying in the 1950s. He was saying that the white man is not your friend. He was saying that you need to do your own thing. He was saying we need to educate our own kids. We need to have our own businesses. And these are all things that Elijah was doing. He started this in the Nation of Islam started in the 30s, I believe, the late 30s,
Yes.
when he supposedly met with Fard Muhammad. So they were doing these things since the 30s. They were.
Let me ask you another
um,
question on a more conspiracy side. After the white man sees the impact that a Marcus Garvey had, and he did away with Garvey to eliminate another
He got
Garvey sprouting
deported.
up. Yeah, he did away with him. So, in order to prevent another Garvey from sprouting up, how about he create his own Garvey, and we'll call him Elijah Muhammad, and all the Garveyites, people who are about that action, will flock to Elijah Muhammad, and then you keep them in that vacuum, because that was one of the terms Malcolm X called it. It's a vacuum, because you join the Nation of Islam, and then you sit there and you do nothing. Even when the cops bust into the mosque and killed Ronald Stokes in 1962, they didn't do nothing. But they can find their way into the Audubon ballroom and kill Brother Malcolm in front of his followers. So I look at all of that and I say,
like I said, I like what Elijah Muhammad was saying at the time he was saying it. I never joined the Nation of Islam. I could have joined the Nation of Islam. I could have become a 5%er. I've never joined the 5%, the Nation of Gods and Earth. I mean, it's personal things, like a lot of things that you were saying. Like, I know that the government had strong ties inside the Nation of Islam. Like I said, I think Farrakhan has always been working for the Nation of Islam. I mean, for the government, because Farrakhan is still for the simple fact that Farrakhan is still alive. Like he talks all that. Khalid is dead. Khalid went. He left. Well, he left what Farrakhan was talking about. And just like I was saying before, about Wallace D. Muhammad, Elijah's son, he told him to shut down the Nation of Islam when he died, and Wallace did shut down the Nation of Islam. And Farrakhan just came, I believe, in the early 80s, like 81, 82, or 1980, around that time, and restarted Nation of Islam. So against Elijah Muhammad's will, he didn't want that to be taught anymore. He said, when I die, I don't want any more Nation of Islam. So, as far as what the Nation does, like I said, I'm not in the Nation. I just appreciate out of all of those figures from the late 30s up until the 50s and the 60s, I appreciate what Elijah was saying to black people. He was on the radio. He had his own newspaper. He was setting the example, regardless of if they did. The Nation had schools in like every city. They had the Clara Muhammad schools. They had the bakeries. Everybody knows about the Final Call, the Muhammad Speaks. They were at least setting an example. They were doing something.
Yeah, but they weren't doing what they should have been doing. See, I always look at that as, it's very hard for me to believe in the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad based off their actions. See, when I see what Malcolm X was doing in that short window of freedom he had, he's galvanizing people, blacks from Europe, blacks in Africa, blacks in the Caribbean, blacks here in America, and he's about to put it together. He's about to take the United States before the United Nations. He's about to get it done. That's why they killed him. See, I think Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, they're vacuums for Garvey-minded people. And you just get them in there and you sit them in there and they have rules to follow. A lot of disgruntled members in the Nation of Islam have spoken out about it in these documentaries that's on YouTube. So it's kind of, and Malcolm X said it himself, like, they weren't doing anything. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And a lot of the businesses that got set up, he said the ones that were really operating in the black were the ones in New York, where he was directly involved in, overseeing. So I look at Martin Luther King and Elijah Muhammad as legs on the same spider. You know what I'm saying? It's all put into place to keep black people in check, just to keep black people still. It's like in the Matrix, you got one level where obviously you're asleep. That's Dr. King. And then you got the Zion level where you think you're awake, but you're really still asleep. So, and you have to have a deeper mind frame. You have to have a deeper way of thinking to even figure that out. You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of like, that's I think that's called Hegelianism, I believe.
Yes.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, that's
but
what
it's kind of like where both of your choices are given to you by the same entity.
Right.
Now, is the Nation of Islam part of that?
Let me ask this question.
Go ahead.
So, does King bring any value toward our ongoing work toward liberation? Does Elijah Muhammad bring any value toward our ongoing work toward liberation?
I believe both of them. I believe both of them do.
I do too.
In what way?
I mean, well, Elijah just set the example, and Martin
set the example how?
At the lowest common denominator. I mean, he set the example of just what you should do to start your own thing. And as far as Martin, I would look at Martin at the end of the day. At the end of the day, like anybody, like I'm not a Martin Luther King fan.
Mm.
I am.
At the end of the day, he died for his people. Like at the end of the day.
But did he though?
That's more than a lot of.
It's all about how you look at it. Like he didn't die for us. I look at Malcolm X. He died for us. Okay. Martin Luther King died for white people. They had to kill him. So his legacy will outshine Malcolm X's legacy. I don't
really think it had that much to do with Malcolm X. I look at Kwame Ture's analysis. We looked at it from a political standpoint because King was a moderate. King wasn't radical. But at the time, it's 1968. And what Kwame Ture says is like, okay, so you got the Black Panther Party. Like you said, they start out in 1966. So Hoover and them and the FBI, they're like, okay, so we got all these black people doing different things, and King is popular. Actually, King was losing popularity because when he came out against the United States government, and that's what I think is valuable. That's one of the major things I think is valuable about King is from a preacher standpoint. From taking a stand against the United States government, against the United States military, and a bold stance against capitalism in general, which most people won't do. He says, okay, well, if we go after the whole Black Panther Party and just if we kill the radicals, then that may push. Because King's moderate, so we look at it like this: if we kill the radicals, then that may push King further to the left, and he'll become more radical. So we don't want that. We want the radicals to stay where they are. So we kill King. Then hopefully that'll just weaken all the people that have been following him, right? So I say that I mentioned I think the value of King is a Baptist preacher. Well, for one, organized. Well, King was more of a mobilizer than an organizer, but even that has value. But a Baptist preacher rallying people, making protests. More of a normal thing to do. Also and again, at the end of his life, speaking out against capitalism, which is very much needed, speaking out against the military-industrial complex, which is much needed. In terms of Elijah Muhammad, I think Elijah Muhammad, even with his flaws, I think that he provided, even if, at that particular point in time, like Cam was saying, at that particular point in time, I think that was something that was very necessary for black people in terms of like spirituality and like as you say, Al, like love, like we need love. Like even if he had to use the white man as a foil, and he had to speak on like the theory of Jacob and talk about how like the white man is the devil, that's psychologically, and some people still argue that maybe the white man is the devil. You know, I don't know about that, but just that idea, because what you do is, like, all of our lives, just like, again, a feature of white supremacy is that basically the black man is the devil. The black man is bad. The black man is inferior. Everything bad is embodied by black people, the black man and the black woman. So then you have a man come along and start talking about, no, you're not the devil. That white man is the devil. So what you thought was God and you thought was pure is actually the devil. And you just, even if it's not true, you just actually consider that could be a possibility. I think that had power, and that affected a lot of our people's thinking, like in the 1940s, 1950s, and even still to this day. Because, I mean, I'm sure it's like, you know, I know of people that, you know, were similar to Malcolm X, like, you know, incarcerated and then just, you know, got exposed to this way, just a different way of thinking. And then, you know, their life, you know, has changed, and, you know, their community, maybe the communities aren't changing as much anymore because the NOI is not as popular. But I definitely think that, so that's one thing. And I'm taking that basically from Dr. Clark, because one of the things, like, when Dr. Clark said was, which opened my eyes, because I used to, you know, get into, like, trying to look at the whole person, like, almost like I had the habit of saying, like, if I can't take the whole person, then I don't want none of you. Right. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, Dr. Clark was in an interview in 1988 on the radio program with Gary Webb, I think his name was. And he was like, you know, I could take this piece from Elijah Muhammad, boom, the spirituality piece or the psychological piece. I could take this piece from Marcus Garvey, you know, about, you know, black redemption and black man being his own master politically. I could take this piece from Booker T. Washington about the economics. Even though I don't like his political position, I think his political position was real weak. I could take that piece from him, and I could take Du Bois's political position. So that's kind of like how I look at, you know, as I move further, I'm starting to look at, like, what pieces can I take from all these different people, even if I can't take, like, pretty much I think Malcolm may be one of the few people, maybe Kwame Ture, that come to mind right now that maybe I'm just like, you know what, I don't have to sacrifice no aspects. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm sure, but they were still humans that made mistakes. I think the mistakes are valuable because we can learn from the mistakes. We probably can learn from the mistakes even more so than learn from the victories.
Right. Now, my thing with Elijah Muhammad, one thing I give him credit for is taking Malcolm Little and making him into Malcolm X. Other than that, right. I really can't see. I can't see. Even after
he got thrown out and everything, said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see any other good qualities from that man. I think it was all just a sham, and that black people fell into. Like, yeah, like, again, we love the words. There's plenty of people, real good orators. People could talk some shit, and Farrakhan is one of them. Jesse Jackson used to have that magic. Al Sharpton used to have that magic. You know what I mean? They could talk some shit, but I don't really fall in love with words. I know in the Million Man March for the first couple of days, I felt really bad that I wasn't there. But see, something told me I don't need to be there because it's bullshit. He said, yo, in the future, we're going to build a nation and we're going to have this world, we're going to have this national black bank. And he said this is 95, it's 2017. He ain't follow through. So niggas is talking shit. And I think we had to make better choices in who we follow. You know, in the very first place, we have to make better choices on who we follow. Like Dr. Umar and Brother Polite, two more charlatans that come out of the woodworks that people seem they like the words. You understand? We fall in love with.
It's kind of like, who gives these people a platform?
Exactly.
It's deeper than that, man. It's like, who gives these people a platform?
No, it's only as deep as we want it to be, because we don't have to pay that shit no. Just like people, the Solution Podcast is out. Ain't nobody paying the shit no mind. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm righteous in where I'm coming from. See, I'm not corrupt. Mm-hmm. I'm not funded by the government.
Well, I said that to say that, you know, those people are put in their position. Even Louis Farrakhan. Like, you know, those
I
people
believe,
are rewarded.
I believe
I'm sure
all of them are. And
both of y'all have,
even Malcolm X probably was put in a position by the Illuminati. But see, he is Neo in the Matrix because he was the one mistake the white man made. Because he wasn't he believed what he was practicing what he was preaching. He believed in the words he was saying. And I'm sure Elijah and them put him to the side like, yo, you know this all a scam, right? And he said, no, the fuck it ain't a scam. And he paid with his life.
The God's word ain't no hustle.
Right. And I think, and listen, I think Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, the same type of monsters. But it's brothers like Bunchy Carter and Fred Hampton, and there's real ones in the nation, in the Black Panther Party that activated it. See what I'm saying? So I commend Brother Huey for coming up with it, but I don't believe in him. I think he was another plant by the government. And it just happens to bring these real ones in, and then they got to do away with them. They got to do away with these real guys. And it's like they could point. So you come into the Black Panther Party, you come into the Nation of Islam, and you speak up, and you not with the program, you think this shit is real, then they know there's a target on your back. They got you. So all the real freedom fighters are dead or in jail. They have died for the cause. Now, what we have to realize is that the brothers who escaped, you have to look at them suspiciously. Why? How did you escape? Why is Farrakhan still alive? If they gunning down this one and that one, how did he escape? They're talking shit and they're not doing it. Because this problem that we have in our community should have been solved way before we were even born. Because a real simple fix. If you love yourself and you love your people, game over. Like, yo, the white man says, yo, you can't eat at this lunch counter. All right, fuck it. I work hard for my money. Like people on the floor, scrubbing the cement for white people. And then you're going to bitch about me giving you my money? Oh, well, fuck that. Like what compels black people to stay in that condition? All right, so maybe if your leader is saying, yo, let's resist peacefully and be passive and show the white people that we're black, man, get the fuck out of here. That's dumb. How about this? How about we pull all our resources? How much you make? How much you make? How much you make? All right, let's pull all our resources and we're going to get our own bus line. Nobody rides the bus, right? Because when we got to sit in the back seat, fuck that. Nobody goes to Woolworths and get the cheeseburger. How about we build one right across the street? You know, King had the opportunity. He had a reach into the poor blacks and the upper echelon of black people. And he did nothing.
Think he had a politically independent mindset.
Say that again.
I don't think King had that politically independent mindset. I think
he wasn't allowed to. I mean, to me, if you ask me in that climate, it is common sense. Before I would think about integrating with a Ku Klux Klan, I would be thinking about running away from them, getting away from them. I'm going to draw a line in the sand. They hanging black people for nothing. I'm drawing a line in the sand. Look, don't go over there, but y'all better not come the fuck over here. Because a black man go up in the tree one day, a white man going to be on the tree the next day. Because you got to let them know, yo, Malcolm X had a great speech on that. Like, yo, you got to speak in the language that your opponent understands. If you talking nonviolence to somebody that's violent, you ain't communicating. He only understands violence. And then, you know, you getting washed down the street by the police, the people that's supposed to protect and serve. You not making, like, King's whole platform doesn't make any sense no matter how you look at it. And then I just find it very, very suspicious that when X dies, he changes it to sound a little bit more up to date because he lost his audience. Now I seen this. He was with
But I mean,
Kwame Ture doing
it's
a
not just
lecture.
King. I mean, that's the prevailing like narrative. Like integrationism was the thing. I mean, you talk about, 1954 Brown versus Board of Education.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of people. I mean, whatever. Again, going back to the 19th century, you had integrationists, and then you had some nationalists. Well, that's always been the case in this country. Yeah, people that wanted to, just like, I mean, going back to the 18th century, like here in Philly, you had like people like Richard Allen that wanted to, they had the opportunity to go to repatriate, go back to Africa, but they said no, America is mine. Or like even Douglas, well, yeah, Douglas was I don't fault him for that, because and I don't think Douglas was saying that I want to be next to white people, but I think his thing was, like, I help, this is my country too, so I want it. And I think that it's not, I think there are some of our people that wanted to just be like, as Malcolm talked about, the house Negroes or the house niggas that would say, what's the matter, boss? He's sick. Be with their master. But I think there was some of us, and I think I put King in this category. I was like, no, our ancestors built this country too, and we want our piece of it. I think that was his approach. And I also think that he was I think he blindly really believed in, again, that Christianity, those Christian doctrines, that these people. So it was like, I'm looking at it as an outsider looking at it. I'm on the same page as you, saying like, nah, I'm not trying to fuck with them white people. I ain't trying to be with them. But I think like with his upbringing and with his study and even like his PhD work and all that, I think he really believed like, nah, these people can change and all that. And I'm like, that's
what makes him a fool.
Everything else that King wrote and what King said and what he documented, I think that he really believed that.
Well, I think we just have a difference of opinion on that guy, because I don't believe anything about him. I think he's a charlatan, top to bottom, and he knew it. Like there wasn't. It's not like a. Let me ask you this.
Have you read any of his books?
No, I haven't read any of his books.
All right. But I challenge you. I don't challenge you. I do challenge you. I don't recommend it. I challenge you.
Okay.
Read Why We Can't Wait. Read that one, and I want to see if that might even slightly change your opinion of him.
All right, I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna read it. Right. It's called Why We Can't Wait.
All right.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, Why We Can't Wait. That's one of them. Why We Can't Wait.
Now I'm gonna tell you why it most likely won't change my opinion, because again, it's words. If he's putting it into action, then I'll fuck with him. But he's dead now, so it's just words on paper. And I see he's done nothing. And when those four little girls got killed,
his whole life he was putting things into action. I think that's why they had to murder him, because of the fact that he was putting things into action.
But what?
And, agitating.
What was getting put into action to whereas, I mean, because it shouldn't be that deep. It shouldn't be us uncovering all this shit that he was supposed to be in the forefront. Like, yo, this is what I'm doing. But he not saying that.
Well, you gotta consider like the historical revisionists and like this like King is, they've done such a, King is like one of the people that like, he's like one of the most popular people that we know nothing about, because like there's a narrative about him where a lot of things like him like going to capitalism and speaking out against the Vietnam War, like if that was the prevailing narrative, then he would have never. I mean, that's why I think he has a statue in D.C. because the statue in D.C. is supposed to be connected to the idea of him being all about just having a dream of the part that we hear, the part of that speech that we hear about and we're told to focus on, and with little white boys and little black boys, little white girls and black girls, holding hands, living happily ever after.
Right.
That's the idea of King that we're supposed to have. But I think he's a complex figure. I think he's a complex figure. And
I don't think he's complex at all.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, I believe he's a charlatan through and through, and you know what I mean. But look, man, I'm gonna wrap this up in a bit. So I just want to know if you brothers had any final words or thoughts on the topic. Yeah.
I might have a quote. I got a quote from Miseducation of the Negro from my copy. It's on page 78. It's not actually a quote from Woodson, but he quotes Frederick Douglass, and it speaks to us as black people becoming producers. And he said, I put this out there. It says, as Frederick Douglass said in 1852, it is vain we talk of being men if we do not do the work of men. We must become valuable to society and other departments of industry than those servile ones from which we are rapidly being excluded. We must show that we can do as well as they. When we can build as well as live in houses, when we can make as well as wear shoes, when we can produce as well as consume wheat, corn, and rye, then we shall become valuable to society. Society, continued Douglass, is a hard-hearted affair. With it, the helpless may expect no higher dignity than that of paupers. The individual must lay society under obligation to him, or society will honor him only as a stranger and sojourner. That was Douglass in 1852. And I take from that, like you were saying, having money, having bread is not, really the goal. The goal is to be producers. Absolutely. And as a collective group of black people to be producers, or else, you're still poor anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Cam, you got anything to add before we wrap it up?
I just want to, like I always say, I want us to invest in our youth. A lot of times our older people, our age and a little younger, our generation under us might be already set in our ways. But I think that we get a chance to change the minds of our youth as far as our culture and being successful, like those that are really successful. I think that's going to have to start with our youth, not trying to look rich with a $500 belt on and a $200 pair of sneaks, because Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg and what's the other guy?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. When you see those guys, they look like they're going to Home Depot to buy a door or something. Buy a box of nails. They're not dressed like they billionaires. They got on a sweatshirt and some khakis and some shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And looking rich is not being rich.
Right.
So that's pretty much it for me.
All right. Well, I just want to say that, Akil brought up Fonte a couple, an hour ago. And I just want to say a quote from him. That's the nature of people. That's why they feed pigeons and try to shoot eagles. And that's what's going on. People are so small-minded, and they praise people like Farrakhan, and they don't know the value of a person like Malcolm X. So we putting the wrong things in the wrong places, which ultimately is corrupting our minds and our children's minds. But I want to thank Cam and Akil for joining me tonight, and I'll see you guys again on Tuesday. All right.
Peace.
Peace.
No difference between me and you. I believe red. You believe green. Keep them building for us.